Alrighty, guys, we're back. This time, what the fuck is Amaruk, also known as the Great Lich Kiliani. He goes by both names, but his titles are very interesting. On one hand, they call him the Lich King. I don't like the Lich King because, well, that's taken by WoW, World of Warcraft. I prefer to call him other things, like the Betrayer of Light, the unending, unliving desire of power. He's a very interesting character, to say the least. Now, the only unfortunate thing is that he follows the stereotypical villain, the stereotypical bad guy, back in the 90s and the 80s, which is that he's evil just because he's evil. There's no real ulterior motive. There's no exploration as to why he's evil. Why is he doing what he's doing? It's just, wahaha, I'm going to destroy the world by crashing the moon onto the planet. And then everyone's like, yeah, we're going to fight him, yeah. But no one stops to go, why do you want to do it that way? Of all the ways, why specifically this way? Like, no one really stops and fleshes that out. Thankfully, there's a few details about Amaruk that I've picked up. There's a few details in there on his speech, and also a few details into his species. What is he? He is a Lich. You see, a Lich in Kingdom Under Fire cannot lie. They are wizards who have sought unobtainable power, and in doing so have sacrificed their life. And in doing so, they have turned into liches, unliving, undead, forever studying arcane tomes and studying arcane magics for not only longevity of life, but also infinite power. Every lich is like this. And the reason why they can't lie is part of the sacrifice they make when they lose their body. Now, it's kind of interesting with Amaruk, because most liches usually hide in caves. It's stated in Kingdom Under Fire, War of Heroes, that liches usually just stay inside their caves and don't really come out. They usually stay away from civilization, stay away from political issues. But Amaruk, the Lich Kiliani, he is a very different breed entirely. All of a sudden, he just comes in and wages war by himself against the world. And we're left guessing why. Well, don't worry, guys, I'm going to fill you in on why. You see, Amaruk comes in with a group of orcs at his side, and he declares war against humanity. This is when many heroes come in to kill him. Now, after he dies, he swears to them he'll be back, and that he'll be back much greater than before. And he's not lying, as he does return. And this is the beginning of a War of Heroes, is where he returns, but he stays behind the scenes this time, because he knows that he cannot fight full on, head on like he did previously. The main reason why he lost the war to begin with was that every hero came out. All the heroes of the elves, the heroes of humanity, the heroes all across the place came out to fight him. So this time he decided to be a little bit more cunning, a little bit more behind the scenes. Now, what's interesting about him is that he's the undead faction. He actually isn't a faction that you can play. If you play as the Dark Legion, you're playing as the Dark Emperor, which is an undead warrior by the name of Rick Blood, who later becomes Rainier in Kingdom Under Fire, War Heroes, Circle of Doom, Crusaders. We all love Rainier. He's badass. But Rainier, or Rick Blood as he's called this time, the Dark Emperor, he is not really allied with Amaruk. In fact, he changes his name to Kiliani. And this is why he goes by both names. Now, Kiliani is his new name, and he has all the liches and demons and skeletons under his control. It's very odd, honestly, that no one really questions it. But at the same time, a lot of interesting things are going on in the world at the time. Like, you have Velon being led by a young vampire known as Richter Rosenheim, and that's odd development. And then you have the orcs and the dark elves all being led by a undead human, which is, again, kind of odd. So there's been a lot of weird things going on at the world at this time. So the idea of a lich rising to power, subjugating all the liches and demons under his will, and then using his undead army to establish territory in the middle of the desert, It doesn't sound that crazy now, does it? Well, either way, the Lich, now going by the name Kiliani, he advises the Dark Emperor, saying, hey, humanity is standing pretty weak right now. The Godland, known as Ecclesia, just broke away from Azilla and declared a civil war against them. Hiranidin is just a fledgling colony ready to be ransacked at any point in time. They're just a bunch of farmers and peasants. And Azilla's so busy, they're not going to be able to help him. So go destroy Hiranidin, and then from there, you'll have enough at your disposal to destroy the elves, destroy the dwarves, destroy Ecclesia, and destroy Azilla at the same time. Now, the thing is that liches cannot lie. They can't. Now, are we to assume that Kiliani's lying? Absolutely not. There is no way he could. So I firmly believe he's telling truth. The only issue is that, of course, unexpected things occur. Like the Human Alliance reforms, humanity is now being led under Azilla again. They really just kind of reunite all the elves and dwarves, old alliances from 100 years ago. And now all the heroes are round up, but this time they're fighting against the Dark Legion's heroes as well. Things did not turn out quite the way that was promised to the Dark Emperor. But the Dark Emperor never blamed Kiliani and never wanted to address him. He never wanted to ask questions. After all, we have to remember who Rick Blood is. He's kind of a barbarian, kind of a berserker. So while he is very level-headed and cool because of his undead status as the Dark Emperor, he's actually very intense, very bloodthirsty, very eager to get into the fight and carve people down. So without ever questioning Kiliani, he could never reveal the true intent for why Kiliani sparked this war between the Dark Legion and the Human Alliance. Why would Kiliani want mounds and mounds of dead bodies in the world from a pointless war that didn't really get anything? No one took over any territory. Well, that leads to what Kiliani's army is, the undead. Kiliani leads an army of just undead skeletons, bone dragons. And here it is, you got wyverns from the Dark Legion dying in droves. You got humans falling by the sword in the handfuls. It's like, oh my god, there's so many skeletons here for Kiliani to profit from. So, with Kiliani now securing his power base, by near the end of the war, everyone realizes, oh my god, Kiliani is trying to bring about the Dark Age. He's trying to bring about the Dark Dimension. He's going to end the Age of Light. The day that we know, he's going to destroy it. The world that we live in is going to be gone because he is building an altar of destruction. An altar able to capture the power of a god and able to bring about the Age of Darkness. This is not good. And he's got an army of skeletons and liches, and now the demons who were originally on the Dark Legion side just betrayed them because their true allegiance was always to the Lich Kiliani. Now things are looking extremely bad. And this is where we see the Human Alliance and the Dark Legion. They don't necessarily sign an agreement with each other, unlike the other days. They're actually still working against each other. But they both just so happen to be fighting against Amaruk's army at the same time. And this is where we see that he is powerful enough to probably take on one army or the other, but he's not strong enough to take on both. And this is where we see his little kingdom gets split asunder as it's fighting a war on two fronts. Now, here's where it gets a little crazy. This is why I call Amaruk the God Slaver. Not Slayer, Slaver. He actually imprisons the god Nibel. Now, the god Nibel is the god of light, the god of the light dimension. The reason why humanity, the elves, the dwarves, why Bergia exists is because of Nibel. And here he is slumbering as a dragon, a great white dragon that just radiates energy and power. Amaruk puts these dark candles in a pentagram formation. And these dark candles are gigantic. They're like the size of a tower. They're huge. But by putting them in a pentagram, he traps Nibel to sleep and is able to harness the power of a god. This is why Amaruk is so powerful, why the Lich Kiliani was almost unbeatable. And by destroying all the pentagrams, they freed Nibel. And when Nibel was freed, he was pissed. He was pissed for all the right reasons. He was just nearly enslaved, and he almost got his own dimension, his own realm destroyed by some jackass from a cave who's just nothing but bones. I was about to say skin and bones, but no, he's just bones. He's not even skin, just bones. So with that, Nibel said, I'm going to smite the shit out of you. Your soul won't even be spared. And he did. The great white dragon flew up in the sky and just blew up the altar of destruction, absolutely decimating it. And ever since then, humanity has considered it a holy ground, because this is where their god laid. This is where their god slept. And ever since, humanity's always been fighting for it. Now, what is interesting about this, we're going to talk about this now. Now that we just covered the whole history of Amaruk, the Lich Kiliani, the god slaver himself, let's talk a little bit about what is his motivations. Why did he do this? What exactly was he thinking when he decided to just declare war against the world 2 times? And was he working for Ankablosa is the big question. Personally, I don't think he is. So here's the thing. When we deal with people who are trying to bring about the Age of Darkness, like Rainier, he was promised that he would rule the Dark Dimension when it occurs. He would rule as a king amongst the dark dimensional beings. He would be almost like a god. Now, when it came to Celis and Kingdom Under Fire 2, he was promised much the same. And then when it came to the third character, Walter, from Kingdom Under Fire, Crusaders, and Heroes, he wasn't promised anything. Instead, he was deceived that he was doing something righteous for God, that he would bring about a change that would wipe out the evilness from the world. So all of these people were promised change in the world, but also change in their environment where they would be uplifted. In Walter's case, it was more promised that he would be basically in heaven. No matter what, he would go to heaven. But all these characters, more or less, could be totally deceived. In my opinion, they're probably deceived. Now, what's interesting about this is that Rainier and Celis both are able to summon dark dimensional beings. In Kingdom Under Fire 2, the early promotionals, it was shown that Rainier, or Rick Blood, the Dark Emperor, would actually have his own Inkablosan army. Celis now has that as well. Now, Inkablosans are not exactly demons. I hate to shit on people's parade like that, but it's not exactly that. They're not demons necessarily. They're instead creatures, much like orcs and dark elves. They are just mythical creatures. That is it. If they were demons, they would have to be summoned. They would have to follow by some sort of rule. But it seems like with Inkablosa, he actually creates these, and then when Celis summons them, he just simply opens up a portal in the dark dimension. They just flood out. It's very different than a more magical being like an imp or a succubus, anything like that, where you would have to do some sort of ritual, some sort of engravings to summon a being of pure magical energy. Whereas Inkablosans are not magical whatsoever. They can exist no matter where magic may be. They may exist in the most barren place and they'll still be fine. But yet the Lich Kiliani, Amaruk, he had demons by his side, but he didn't have Inkablosans. He didn't have the powers of the dark dimension really at his side. He only just had basic magic. He had amazing fire casting abilities where he could summon a huge wave of fire to engulf his enemies in front of him. He could summon massive electrical storms to wipe out enemy flying units. He could shield himself with crazy arcane magics. He was powerful, but he wasn't using magic that was restricted to people. He was using magic that anyone else could have done. He was using magic Moonlight could have done. He was using magic the elves could have done. He was using magic that everyone could have. But because he's a lich, he had the time to put and learn all this magic. There's really nothing about him that screams to me that he's an agent of the dark dimension, that he is working for Ankablosa. And never when he says that he's going to bring about a new dark age is he saying that he's working for Ankablosa. Never does he say Ankablosa will rule. Now, you may say, well, for 700, if he's going to destroy the Age of Light, he's going to basically make Ankablosa win. And for that, you're absolutely right. But we have to remember this. Amaruk, I like saying his name, Amaruk. I don't like saying Kiliani. But Amaruk, he enslaved Nibel. He used giant dark candles to put Nibel to sleep and harness his power so he could summon his giant ass kingdom of undead armies. What's to say he wouldn't do the same to Inkablosa? This is what I would have loved to see. I would have loved to see it where Amaruk is a lich at heart, where he's always, always, always vying for power. That's all he wants. He just wants more arcane power, more arcane power. And he shed away his skin, his humanity, so he could attain higher forms of power. But now he's just bones, and he's already hit the limit for his magical power. So now he's like, fuck, what's higher than bones? Godlyhood. So he enslaves the gods. He enslaves it to where light and dark dimension are under his grasp. This is what I think he was trying to do. Was he wasn't trying to bring about the end of the world. He was trying to bring about total power for himself, where he could enslave both Inkablosa and Nibel, the god of light and the god of darkness. And in doing so, bring about a new god, possibly, uplifting himself beyond anything any wizard could ever dream of. And it would explain why the liches follow him. Because the liches are vying for power, magical sorcerer power. And he is the epitome of it. If he's reached his climax, then what else is there? If no one can ever get as high as Amaruk has, then of course the only course is to just follow him and see what the next stage is. I already shed my humanity. I already shed my orcness. I already shed my whatever living flesh I was tied to. Now I'm just bones and I'm still very powerful, but there's obviously more ways I could be more powerful. Show me the next step, Amaruk. And that's where Amaruk does. He shows him, now that you shed your bones, now it's time to shed away your physical form and enslave the gods, enslave the demons, enslave everything. And that's where I think Amaruk is really about, is just unrelenting search for power. And that makes him a little bit more scary, in my opinion, was that he was going to destroy the world just for the sake of his own personal gain. The ultimate, most selfish person in the fucking universe of Kingdom Under Fire is the most notable villain known as Amaruk, the guy who barely has 3 lines of dialogue. That is what I think Amaruk is. Besides that, this has been Free 700. I am out. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys enjoyed the theory crafting I may have done here, saying about what Amaruk could have been, what his personality, what his goals may have ultimately been, which is a lot scarier when you think about it. Here, the heroes can fight against the champion of Inkablosa. No matter how godly they may be, they can easily beat him. But how do you fight a guy who enslaved both gods and has the power of both gods running through him? How do you fight that? Besides that, this has been Free 700. I'm out. See you guys next time. Peace.